Well, I've got Wharerah right side up. Paul Donington, the current custodian, and his daughter Amy were here yesterday and gave me a hand turning it over. Somehow I just totally forgot. I should have had a shot of them helping me, but anyway, just trying to figure out the next move. I think what I'm going to do is on the inside here, the couple of cracks here. I think I'm just going to put some epoxy and sawdust in there to fill the cracks. That way, if I do use some paint remover on the inside, it's not going to get into the crack. And also up here where I've got a pretty big one, I can see the outside. Probably somebody rolled the boat over on its deck, by its deck here at one point. That's how the deck got broken. Or it might have been bobbing up and down and caught on the dock. Anyway, this crack here goes to the outside, so I don't want paint remover running down the outside, because if I can help it, I think I'm not going to strip the outside. The one concern I do have is what the color of this old wood is going to be if I strip it. So I'm trying to match it to the new stuff. I'm not sure whether the boat should stay dark and I make use some stain on the new wood, which would be a lot of work, especially on the ribs. I would have to mask every single one. But as far as if I do strip it, an ideal time to do it is while I'm re-ribbing it. Taking out every other rib gives me a lot more room to strip and sand it. So I think what I'm going to do after I put some epoxy in those cracks, keep the stripper out, I'm going to try maybe up here below the seat where it's not going to be visible. I'm going to try stripping a little section to bare wood and see how that looks. I've just gone along these two little sections with a scraper to see what the results will be. It's actually pretty dark, the varnish. I think I'm going to strip the old varnish as I change the ribs. It's a perfect opportunity to get it clean. The other thing is this varnish is probably 60 years old, and when you top coat over top of it, it's pretty unpredictable what's going to happen with the new varnish if this varnish starts reacting with the new stuff. The deck here, I'm not going to strip the deck. Down the road, if that needs to be done, I mean, it's not a huge deal. But I think a couple of coats will make this look pretty decent. The inside of the hull, though, is a different matter. It's something that will never get done with the ribs in, or it won't be done as successfully as it can be done with as the ribs are being changed. So I'm going to change the ribs, and I'm going to just clean up the inside of the varnish as I'm going. Taking out a few ribs, I just split them out with a chisel, and I'm going to have to drill the new planks and take the nails out of the old planks. And it's perfect time. You can see how much more room I have to clean up the planking. A lot of times when I look at boats, people ask me, well, the ribs don't look that bad. Well, here's a piece of rib coming out of the bottom. It looks good and solid, but there is just no strength in it. It's the lignum in the wood, when it gets oil soaked, there's no strength. So even though the rib looks fine, there is really no strength in it. Just for comparison to that piece of oak I just snapped off, here's a new piece of rib stock, and I'm about 220 pounds. Here's me standing on it, pretty well unsupported. So that's how strong the ribs should be. I've got that white oak back in the shop here, and this is the stuff that I purchased. It was sawn and ready to go into the kiln, but I got it before it went into the kiln. Unfortunately, most of the hardwood these days comes from the United States, or most of the white oak anyway. I was talking to the fellow at the lumberyard. He had an interesting observation. He said, it's a high volume business and they work on a margin of about 10%. And he wasn't sure how 25% tariff was going to affect his business. But anyway, this is not a political show, so I'm going to plane this wood. When I picked it out at the lumberyard, it's actually wringing wet. This is a piece down at the bottom. It was all frozen together. Some of it I had to whack with a sledgehammer to get it apart because it was about -20 outside when I was picking through it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plane it so I can see the face of the grain. The hard thing about when it's rough sawn, it's pretty hard to tell where the sapwood is, and I want to make sure I don't use any sapwood. The other thing is with ribs, I like to have the grain fairly straight, and this is the edge of the grain here. I don't know how I can capture this, but if you look at the end of the plank here, you can see how the grain on this is a flat sawn board. And because there was no 4/4 available, which I would normally have gotten, I wound up with 6/4, which is 1.5 inches. So with a bit of creative sawing, I can just maybe get 3 ribs out of here, possibly 4, and then I'll flip it and turn the other way. The idea being that the rings of the grain will be, like a lamination, so I don't want to be bending it the wrong way. So I'm going to make sure I saw the ribs so the orientation is correct. I've got quite a pile here. I don't think I'm going to need all of it, but I've got another boat that might need some of this. I think in total on a pork carling boat there are 52 ribs. So that's a lot of ribs, and I like to make sure I have a few extras on hand. So I'm going to just plane a few boards, and I'll get back to it when I'm sawing it. I've just run all these boards through the planer just to clean up the face. You can see here on this board it's still wringing wet, which is good for ribs. One problem though is quite often at the lumberyard before it goes into the kiln, they end coat the grain to keep it from checking at the ends. I've got 8-foot length here, which is a foot longer, but I'm just going to find some old varnish and just slap that on the ends here to slow down the checking. I just don't want any checks that are going to travel too far up the board and minimize the waste. You can see at the end here, it hasn't been in the shop. So I've been in the shop for about a week now, but just it's probably drying out too rapidly. And it's usually dries through the end grain, so I'll just coat that and leave it for another couple of days. But I can see here I've cleaned up the face. The grain looks pretty good on this. It doesn't look like too much sapwood on this side, but it has to be a bit drier before I can really tell. step will be to plane all of those strips down to what will become the width of the ribs. Just measuring these. Of course, over the years they've been scraped, some places more enthusiastically than others. It's supposed to be 7/8. I'm a big fan of digital measuring tools. My planer has got a digital depth gauge. It makes a lot of things like this repeatable. I've seen a lot of boats where things like decking or ribs, they get done and then you run out and somebody makes them again and they're never the same. With a digital tool, when I'm working to within 1/1000 of an inch, then it's very repeatable. I'm just looking here. Various widths, it goes between 0.88, which is I guess 0.87578. Up here it's 0.93, here it's 0.9, here it's 0.89, here it's 0.92, 0.87, 0.88. So I think I'm going to make them 0.9. Getting down to the final cuts now, and notice wherever really wet oak touches iron, it tends to turn it black. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting a bit of paste wax on the table of the planer, which will help a little bit and will also help them slide a little easier. Push it down. Now, wedge out. Next one. Next one.
Hold on just a sec. Alright.
Stripping the inside and changing the ribs at the same time. I think the inside of the old planking is going to clean up quite nicely. I'm not planning on doing the decks or anything. I might see if I can save the oar locks, but the worst part is these things have to come off. I've been trying with an impact screwdriver to get the steel screws out, but there's slot heads. I mean, the last resort would be to split these off with a chisel and take the screws out with vice grips, but then the new ones would stick out pretty badly. I'm going to see if I can get these off. It's a bit of a challenge. Originally this deck was made, then the in-whale went on halfway during the construction of the deck, so the trunk nail here was through the first 2 layers of decking and then it's clenched over. It's just impossible to replace that without, even if I could get trunk nails, without changing the deck. So what I'm doing is very nice oval head slot screws I'm going to put in here. They're bronze. Just a little bit crooked to miss the broken off copper in there. A bit of varnish on here to make them a little slippery.
8:24.
I'm just going over the inside here. I've stripped it and sanded it where the ribs have been removed. Here it's still a little gray, so I'm just gonna give it a little brushing of fairly diluted oxalic acid. That should get rid of the gray, and then I'll give it a sanding in the morning before I put the ribs in these spaces. Back here at the back, this is where I've gone over with the oxalic acid. This is the old wood. And there's the new planking, the rivery covered. So I think it's going to be a pretty good match. Next one, you ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
Okay.
Okay. Ready?